Yes. First, I would like to do a reading, which includes the benefits of mindfulness. Because as you know, during this time, this very challenging time, the practice of mindfulness is very, very beneficial. Okay? The world is in an anxious, fearful, frustrated, and confused state. The world is in an anxious, fearful, frustrated, and confused state. The politicians and news media people are also anxious, fearful, and confused. The mind changes from liking to disliking, from craving to aversion, from anxiety to frustration, with the agitation of the world. If you can learn to make the mind still, calm, and peaceful, it will be the greatest help to the world. If you can learn to make the mind still, calm, and peaceful, it will be the greatest help to the world. Mindfulness is a skillful way of relating to and connecting to life and daily experience. It is paying attention on purpose in the present moment and in a non-judgmental way. It is a way of being, and it takes practice. It is calm attention to what is happening from moment to moment without discrimination or criticism. It is the observing power of the mind that sees without the filter of desire or aversion, liking or disliking, or delusional reaction. It is therefore a wholesome way of seeing what is happening in the present moment. Mindful breathing brings the mind home to the body. You begin to experience calmness, a sense of well-being, and quiet joy. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. This helps our concentration and focus, and we begin to appreciate the fact of being alive instead of being distracted and confused by compulsive thinking. This knowing that we speak about is intuitive knowing. It is not intellectual knowing, which is just based on thinking and memory and knowledge, information. This knowing is very different. It comes with being mindful. For example, if you're tired or hungry, you know you're tired or hungry. Just like when you breathe in mindfully, you know you're breathing in. When you breathe out mindfully, you know you're breathing out mindfully. So it's an aspect of intelligence. It's a natural intelligence. Just like when you're crossing the road, you look right, you look left, and you look right again, and you know when it is safe to cross. Just like when you're driving, you have to be mindful. You know when to stop, when to turn right, when to turn left, and when you can change lanes. So this knowing is a natural intelligence. Mindful breathing can help us to stop thinking about the past with regret and guilt, and stop thinking about the future with anxiety, fear, and uncertainty. We're able to experience tranquility and stillness, which is both most beneficial and precious in our busy and stressful lives. Mindful walking helps us to be in the present moment, and we can appreciate the beauty of the environment. One can stop and smell the roses and experience the joy of just being alive. Mindful eating in silence is a peaceful activity, and we can appreciate the food much more. When we're eating and talking, what we're talking about becomes more important than the food. The food becomes a secondary thing. Mindful cleaning, cooking, and washing help us to enjoy doing these activities instead of being in a hurry to finish them, so that we can do other things. Present moment, wonderful moment. With mindfulness and calm focus, we can deal with our own suffering, our anxiety, fear, and worry, frustration, irritation, anger, resentment, sadness, and sorrow. You can embrace your mental, emotional upset and take care of it with compassion, kind acceptance, and patience. Mindfulness has the power to heal past traumas and conflicts because it is a state of non-duality. And so one is able to be objective and see things as they are without identifying with them and let them go. I'll be speaking more about this, about the state of non-duality. Mindfulness also helps us not to react to unpleasant words and situations, and not to take things so personally. A great deal of our mental energy is caught up in habitual reactions. It is our reactions which make us burn out, which throws us off balance and causes us suffering and discontent, dis-ease. Things get better in our lives when we react less and less. We can remain calm and patient, wise, strong, and secure. Then we can respond in a beneficial way and be helpful to others. So with mindfulness, we can appreciate the difference between reacting and responding, in acting in a very beneficial way. Our basic problem in life is that we take things too personally, even things that are not directly related to us. This is an aspect of ignorance and delusion. Mindfulness is much more than you think. Our lives are not determined by what happens to us, but by how we react to what happens. Not by what life brings to us, but by our attitude we bring to life. The world is as it is. Life is constantly changing and uncertain. A calm and positive attitude causes a chain reaction of positive thoughts, events, and outcomes. It is a catalyst, a spark that creates extraordinary and surprising results. Events do not cause us suffering. They may cause us physical discomfort or some inconvenience and delay. Of course, the current pandemic is a good example of this. It is our mental emotional reaction to those events that cause us suffering, upset, anger, frustration, anxiety, and despair. Without mindfulness, we are enslaved and deluded by mental activity, by too much thinking and the power of the imagination. This is a source of dukkha, mental emotional disturbance. We believe that to follow our impulses and satisfy our desires and expectations is freedom. This is an illusion. In fact, we are slaves to craving, clinging, frustration, fear, and despair. In mindfulness, one is not only restful, calm, and happy, but alert and awake. Meditation is not an evasion or escape. It is a clear and serene encounter with reality. With mindfulness, we can skillfully deal with our thoughts and emotions. With objective awareness of our mental landscape, we can see thoughts as just thoughts, feelings as just feelings, moods and emotions as just moods and emotions. We can see and understand their impermanent, changing, and uncertain nature, and can therefore let them go, thus freeing the mind of suffering and dis-ease. Now, as we read before, mindfulness or present moment awareness is a state of non-duality. Now, what does that mean? It means that there is no I, no self, who is being mindful, who is being aware. There's only that energy of attention. Now, initially, we don't see this because we are brought up, we are conditioned to identify with experience. You know, we say, Initially, I like this, I don't like that. That already is duality. But of course, we're conditioned with duality in a very innocent way since childhood. Duality means a subject and object. When you say I like something or I don't like something, that's already subject and object. Of course, the I is always the subject. And of course, the condition of duality is a deeper condition when we identify with our sense experiences. We say, I'm seeing something. Initially, there is only seeing. There's only hearing. There's only tasting, smelling, and thinking, and touching. But because we identify with these experiences by conditioned habit, we say, I am seeing something. I am hearing something. I'm smelling something. I'm tasting something. I'm feeling something by touch. And of course, I'm thinking thoughts. So thereby we are creating duality, subject and object. But again, initially we don't see this. But when you're being very mindful, and of course, if you're on a longer retreat, when you're very calm, very present, very mindful, you're able to see this more clearly. How consciousness is actually happening by themselves. The senses are actually sensing by themselves. Seeing is automatic, isn't it? Hearing is automatic. When you start to eat something, tasting is automatic. Smelling is automatic. When you touch something, the touch sensation is automatic. And for most people, thinking is automatic. And most people are not even aware that they're thinking. Thinking is just, it's compulsive, it's just a habit. And most of the time, we're not even aware that we're thinking. We're only caught up, in what we're thinking about. The many stories, the mini dramas, worries, fears, cravings, frustration, and so on. So this was one of the insights of the Buddha. He saw how the senses were sensing by themselves, and there was actually no one behind it. But it takes practice, of course. It takes practice and reflection and being silent, like on a retreat. Then we can see this more clearly. Now, when it comes to dealing with emotions and thoughts, because mindfulness or present moment awareness is a state of non-duality, as we said, there's only that energy of attention. It gives us the ability to see thoughts as just thoughts. We see feelings and emotions as just feelings and emotions. For example, instead of saying, normally say when anger arises or some upset or fear, we're in a habit of identifying with it, don't we? We say, I am angry, or I am upset, or I'm afraid, I'm scared, I'm frustrated, I'm lonely, I'm bored, etc., etc. This is our habit. So when we identify with these mental emotional states, we hold on to them. We grasp them as something personal. And this is something that the Dhamma teaches us, that when we learn to see things as they are, then we're free of them. So for example, instead of saying I am angry, or I'm upset, or I'm afraid, we can breathe mindfully and we can say there is a state of anger, or there is anger. Instead of saying I'm upset, you can say there is upset, or there's a state of upset. Instead of saying I'm afraid or I'm scared, there is fear, or there's a state of fear. And you begin to see there's a big difference in saying I'm afraid or I'm upset or I'm angry, and just seeing it objectively. There is anger, there's upset, there's fear, there's frustration, and so on. Very big difference. Because when we can see things objectively as they are, then there is space. There's some space. We can see it with some space, because awareness is spacious by nature. We're not grasping, we're not holding on to this mental emotional state as mine, as something personal. This is a psychotherapy of mindfulness. And then we remind ourselves, this is only a temporary mental state. It is impermanent. It is only a changing condition of mind. And of course, there is no self. When we see things objectively, there is no self. And as you know, many psychotherapists are now using this method. It's called mindfulness-based psychotherapy. And this is exactly what the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago. Also, as you know, normally we don't see thoughts as just thoughts, unless you're on a long retreat. Then you can see thoughts more objectively. But normally, in our everyday life, we get caught up in what the mind is creating, endless stories. As you know, the mind, the imagination, thoughts are always creating stories. And most of the time, we think these stories are true. Sometimes they create, mini dramas, worries, fears, cravings, frustration, and so on. So we're deluded. The Dharma teaches us that without mindfulness, we're deluded by these mind-created stories, fears, mini dramas, cravings, frustration, anxiety, and so on. So this is why there's a very useful practice. If the mind is creating a story, you can just note mindfully in your mind, just say, thinking, thinking, thinking. Thinking, 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 and come back to present moment mindfulness. Whether it's the breathing, the hand movements, or mindful walking. It's a very beneficial practice. And I've used this practice myself. Because when you can note thinking, 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 it helps us to get out of the story or the worry or the fear that the mind is creating. It helps us to get out of the contents of those thoughts and images. And you realize they're only thoughts, that's all. Only thoughts and images. The story, the mini drama, the fear, the craving, frustration, they are not real. But as you know, when we are not mindful and the mind gets very obsessive, what the mind creates seems so permanent, so solid, so real. And many of our fears are like that. And as you know, the power of the imagination, right? You start to imagine, this might happen, that might happen, and so on. And normally we imagine the worst case scenarios. So this is where the power of mindfulness comes in, and the mental noting, only thinking, thinking, thinking. You can even add the word only. It's only thinking, thinking, thinking. Very useful technique. So you can try that and see the value of it. And of course, when we realize that they're only thoughts and images, again, we come back to that understanding, the wisdom that these thoughts and images are impermanent mental objects, mental conditions. Just like our feelings and emotions or moods, when we objectify them, we know they're impermanent, only changing conditions of the mind. And we come back to present moment mindfulness, and we can let go of those mental emotional states. Just like we let go of these thoughts that are creating dukkha in the mind. So this is a psychotherapy of Dhamma practice. And you see that thoughts are coming from three things in the mind. They're responding to memory, that's very obvious. past experience, because past experience and memory are together, and of course, knowledge, information. So that's where thinking is coming from. Memory, past experience, knowledge, information. And if you observe your mind, you can see this. And thinking also has that ability to project in the future. And this is why most of the time we're either thinking about the past or we're projecting in the future. And all our thinking behaves like this. It's just the nature of the thinking process. Whereas mindfulness, present moment awareness, is very different. It's not related to the thought process. It is unconditioned, and it is always in the present moment. So the awareness we had as young children is the same awareness we have today. It doesn't change. It is unconditioned. So this is what the Buddha pointed to train the mind, to observe the mind through mindfulness meditation practice, to bring back mindfulness into our experience. Because if we're trapped in thinking, then we're at the mercy of, especially unpleasant memories, unpleasant experiences, feeling guilty, having regrets, or we worry too much about the future. Now, as you know, sometimes we need to think about the future. You have a certain plan, a certain idea. But if we obsess too much about the future, which is the unknown, then naturally we experience more frustration, more fear, anxiety, and worry. And of course, uncertainty. And as you know, this current pandemic is really teaching us how to be in the present moment, because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. So this is why mindfulness is so important, to keep the mind in the present moment. So it can be more calm, more patient, less obsession about the future. And of course, we try to imagine so many things that might happen. Of course, it's natural to have certain concerns, but without mindfulness, we begin to, become more frustrated, more anxiety, more fear, and so on. Also, what is important about dealing with, say, unpleasant memories, and we all have unpleasant memories, is that when we identify with these unpleasant memories, and of course, every time we think about those unpleasant memories, you can still get upset, or you can feel regret, feel guilt, and so on. Even things that happened, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the mind still gets upset. Now, with mindfulness, something extraordinary begins to happen. We begin to realize that those unpleasant memories are actually just thoughts and images that are happening in the present moment. That's right. They're only thoughts and images that are happening in the present moment. Although they're related to past experiences, past events, but those very memories are only thoughts and images that are happening in the present moment. Only thinking. And it's very liberating when we realize this. And likewise, when we think too much about the future, when we bring mindfulness into the mind, we see that there are only thoughts and images that are happening in the present moment. Only thinking. So as we said, naturally we have to think sometimes about the future, but when we think too much, we're too obsessed for the future, then of course we create more anxiety, fear, and so on. Now, I would like to just do another reading. This mind is all we have. The mind is the forerunner of all experiences through consciousness. All experiences, pleasant or unpleasant, are within us. This is what we have to take care of and manage to the best of our ability with right effort and mindfulness, right attitude and understanding. There are some things we cannot control, but what we can control, however, is how we handle and respond to the current global pandemic situation. Mindfulness helps us to have a more stable base of presence and attention so that we can be more calm, patient, and accepting, humble and thankful during these times of uncertainty, frustration, anxiety, and confusion. We can learn to be at peace with ourselves, come to terms with our basic aloneness, because we are alone. Our basic aloneness, we are alone. Being simple and content with what we have. Not seeking temporary pleasure and happiness in shopping for new things. Also appreciating family and friends and helping others when we can. And appreciating nature in the present moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. There's also another very delightful way of mindful practice, which was taught by Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, the well-known Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese teacher. He calls it mindful breathing and smiling. For example, breathing in, I know there's fear in me. Breathing out, I smile. And you breathe and you smile mindfully. Breathing in, I know there's frustration in me. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I know there's frustration in me. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I know there is craving in me. Breathing out, I smile. And so on. It's a very beneficial practice because smiling is a very wholesome state of mind. And when we can breathe and smile mindfully, we naturally feel happier, and it helps us to relax. And also, this mindful smiling is also the smile of metta, of loving kindness, because you're not judging that mental state. You're not judging what arises in the mind. You simply accept it with loving kindness. So it's a very positive practice, mindful breathing and smiling. And of course, if you can laugh at whatever arises in the mind, also very good. And I'm sure some of you are aware of the laughing yoga, right? Laughing yoga. That's practiced in India. You can go to YouTube and type laughing yoga. You see a group of Indians just laughing and laughing. And sometimes I do the Qigong movements, and one of them is like the laughing Qigong. You can see that on YouTube. You can just go the Qigong with Bhante Kovida. You can see the movements. And they're very simple. Qigong is very simple because it's only the upper body that moves. So, and it's a form of dynamic mindfulness. And during the lockdown, in the early parts of the pandemic, many people, say in Malaysia, Singapore, have been practicing the Qigong, just watching the video. Because especially in Malaysia, the lockdown was very strict. The police were always checking on people. People were only allowed to go out for food shopping and medicine shopping, you know, to the drugstore. They could not walk or exercise. It was that strict. So just following the Qigong video, they found it very, very useful, okay? So we have to end here. I don't have time for questions, but if you have any personal questions, you can send email, no problem. I think Bhante has my email address, but it's buddhadeepa.99@gmail.com. Yeah, Bhante Nanda has